The morning Emily closed on the house, she had $23 in her checking account and a colleague filming her with his phone just in case she failed. At the county auction room in Atlanta, he whispered to another agent that she was crazy to waste her savings on a foreclosure in that neighborhood. When the clerk read the final hammer price, several investors shook their heads and walked out as if she had just bought a sinking ship. Emily took the keys with a tight jaw and a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. By the time she parked outside the small brick house on Pine Grove, she already knew about the mold notice and the copper thieves. Her car smelled of fast food and stress. The lawn was knee-high and full of plastic bottles. A neighbor in a Falcons hoodie yelled from his porch that the last guy had given up after 3 weeks and that the place probably still had squatters. That was the first jolt of doubt. The second came when she found the back door frame splintered and had to shoulder it open. Every step inside complained under her weight, and the air felt like wet drywall and old cigarettes. Still, there were small wins. The living room had original hardwood under the filthy carpet. The kitchen cabinets were ugly but solid. In the smallest bedroom, however, her foot caught the corner of a loose board. It rocked under her heel with a hollow sound. She knelt, tapped it again, and felt the hair rise on her arms as something clicked softly beneath the floor. She came back the next day with gloves, a headlamp, and a contractor she trusted from other flips named Marco. The power was still off because the utility company demanded a safety inspection first, and the daylight faded fast behind storm clouds. They worked with flashlights that made the hallway feel narrower. When Marco tested the joists in that bedroom, he said the subfloor might be compromised and that replacing it would eat a scary chunk of her budget. That was the first obstacle. On paper, extra thousands she did not really have. The second was less visible. Her phone kept buzzing with messages from another agent offering to introduce an investor who could buy the house from her immediately for a small profit and relieve her of the headache. Over and over, people tried to nudge her toward a quick exit. Instead of answering, she pulled back the stained carpet in the bedroom while Marco checked the crawlspace vents. The board that had moved yesterday sat almost flush now, as if it regretted dilettando itself. She pressed on one edge, nothing. She pressed on the other and again felt that soft give in the middle. Before she could pry it up, though, a heavy crack echoed from the hallway. A section of ceiling sagged dangerously near the entry, and Marco shouted that someone had cut through a load-bearing wall in the past. He told her they had to get out until he could shore it up. Emily left with dust in her hair, the loose board still in place, and the certainty that walking away had just become the easier and safer option. That certainty chased her all night, while the image of that hollow sound kept returning like a question with teeth. On the third day she went alone. No contractor, no audience. Just a crowbar, a flat screwdriver, and the kind of stubbornness that shows up when fear has already taken its turn. The sky was clear and cold. In the bedroom she opened both windows to let some air in, then knelt by the suspicious plank. The wood was old oak with small nail heads half hidden by layers of paint. With the screwdriver she worked around each nail until it squealed loose one by one. Her knees ached, but the rhythm of metal against wood calmed her nerves. When the last nail came free, she slid the crowbar under the edge and leaned her weight forward. The board rose with a slow, dry groan, and the smell that Salio from DeBayo was different, deeper dust mixed with plastic and a faint, sweet chemical scent from some forgotten cleaner. The cavity was about the length of her forearm and lined with contractor trash bags. She pinched one between her fingers, felt the crinkled plastic and the unmistakable sharp corners of electronics inside. Her heart started to race in a way that had nothing to do with renovation stress. Carefully she lifted the bag out. Inside were 2 black external hard drives wrapped in a dish towel from a diner in Jacksonville and a folded sheet of printer paper stiff with age. No jewelry, no cash, only the silent weight of hardware. For a second, disappointment flooded her. Then she turned the paper and saw 12 short English words typed in 3 neat rows along the top and a scribbled note under them that mentioned the word wallet and a year that now felt very far away in the world of Bitcoin. Her hands did not shake until she realized that the year written there was from the very early days. Emily did not plug anything in at the house. The stories about malware and booby trap drives were too familiar from late-night real estate forums. She put the bundle in her trunk, drove to her small apartment, and set everything on the kitchen table next to a frozen pizza and a stack of utility bills. Then she called her younger brother, who worked in IT in Raleigh. He laughed at first and told her it was probably nothing, then paused when she read the 12 words to him over the phone. He searched while they talked and his voice changed. That pattern of words looked exactly like a seed phrase for a Bitcoin wallet from one of the early common setups. He convinced her to buy a brand new laptop with cash and a hardware wallet at a big electronics store so nothing touched her regular accounts. 2 days later, they sat together in her apartment with the blinds closed, the new computer still smelling of factory plastic. Her brother installed an open-source wallet interface from a clean source and guided her through entering the phrase. At first, the screen showed nothing, just a new empty wallet. Her chest sank. Then he toggled a setting to scan for additional addresses linked to that seed. The progress bar crept forward while both stared. One by one, old transactions began to populate the history. Tiny purchases at first, then larger deposits from long-abandoned exchanges. At the bottom, a final incoming transfer from 8 years earlier and no outgoing movement since then. When the wallet balance finished calculating, the number on the screen made both of them very quiet. Even after taxes and volatility, it was enough to do far more than patch a damaged ceiling. Everything that came after that number was less about excitement and more about paperwork, fear, and conversations. Her brother insisted on speaking with a lawyer who knew property law and digital assets in Georgia. In a small office near Peachtree, the attorney listened while Emily explained that the drives and paper had been hidden under the floor after the previous owner had already lost the house to foreclosure. The bank had taken title, then the county, and finally sold it at auction to her. The attorney pulled the deed records and confirmed that there were no claims or liens mentioning digital property. His opinion was careful. Physical contents that remain in a foreclosed home after proper notice usually pass with the property. If no one steps forward to prove ownership and no crime is tied to the funds, then she is likely the lawful owner once she reports and pays taxes. That word crime hung in the air for a moment as he mentioned anti-money laundering checks and potential flags from the exchange. Emily agreed to move slowly. Next came the accountant, who explained capital gains in simple language and calculated a painful but manageable tax bill. In group chats, some fellow agents reacted with genuine joy while others sent polite one-line messages that felt colder than silence. One older flipper told her that if the story spread too wide, she might end up with strangers at her door. So Emily and her brother decided to cash out gradually through a regulated U.S. exchange with full identity verification and compliance reports. It was not glamorous. It took weeks of uploads, selfie checks, bank confirmations, and nervous phone calls with fraud departments. At one point, a compliance officer asked about the origin of funds, and she had to explain the floorboard all over again, this time to a man in New York who sounded tired but amused. When the first wire finally landed in her business account along with a confirmation email from the bank, she sat in her parked car outside the branch for a long minute, steadying her breathing and thinking about drywall dust and that hollow sound from the board. Emily could have stopped there and simply paid off debts, bought a nicer car, and kept flipping small houses. Instead, she walked back into the same county office where they had once snickered at her auction bid and asked about land banks, tax delinquent lots, and any program related to affordable housing. Staff members who barely noticed her before now took meetings. With the first part of the money, she finished the Pine Grove renovation, carefully saved the floorboard as a personal reminder, and sold the house at a fair market price to a family through a program that helped with down payments. Then she set up a new company with a nonprofit partner to buy clusters of rundown duplexes near transit lines and turn them into safe rentals with modest but steady returns. The numbers still had to work, but now she could accept lower margins than the big investors and still sleep well. Neighbors who once joked that she was wasting time on lost causes began calling her first when a relative faced foreclosure. Contractors who had blown her off earlier now answered on the first ring. Her brother handled the technical side and made sure the remaining Bitcoin stayed secure and fully documented. Some evenings, Emily drove past the Pine Grove house and watched kids playing on the small front lawn she had once crossed with her stomach in knots. She understood that luck had played a huge role, that another buyer could easily have been the one to step on that board. But she also knew this. The real treasure was not the number on a crypto screen. It was the freedom to choose a version of success where more people shared the benefit and where a foreclosed house that smelled of smoke and mildew could become the place where someone finally felt at home.